Somewhere along a quiet river in upstate New York, there's a plant standing taller than a grown man. It doesn't hide. That's the strange part. It waves these huge white flowers like something out of a storybook. And that's exactly why people get hurt. They walk right up to it. They stand their kids beside it for a photo. And 2 days later, some of them end up in a burn unit. This thing doesn't bite, doesn't sting, makes no sound at all. It just waits for the sunlight to finish the job. And what it does to human skin still gets described in a low, careful voice. You've always been told your backyard is a safe zone. The dog, the grill, the kids. But over the last few summers, that safe zone has quietly gotten smaller. What once lived only along abandoned rail lines and remote ditches has crept toward suburban lawns, playgrounds, and trailheads. And here's the catch. Most people can't tell it apart from an ordinary wildflower until the damage is already done. Botanists have clinical names for the injuries. The rest of us just call them scars. Some fade in months, some last 6 years, some don't fully leave at all. Let me be straight with you. This isn't a creature from a horror movie. It's a plant, a member of the carrot family of all things. Its name is giant hogweed, and its scientific name comes from Hercules because of its size, and somebody long ago actually thought it was beautiful. Back in the 1800s, wealthy gardeners imported it as an ornamental showpiece. One of its first plantings in North America went into gardens near Highland Park, right in the city of Rochester, New York. They wanted something impressive for the lawn. What they planted was a slow-moving hazard that outlived every gardener who touched it. Here's where it stops being charming. This plant grows up to 14 feet tall, and some mature specimens have been recorded even higher. Its hollow stems run up to 4 inches thick, splotched with purple, and bristling with coarse white hairs. The leaves spread as wide as 5 feet, and the flower head, that flat white umbrella, can reach 2.5 feet across. Gardeners nicknamed it Queen Anne's lace on steroids. But up close, most people still don't clock the danger. That gap between how gentle it looks and how much harm it does is exactly why the injuries keep piling up. So what happens when you touch it? Every part of this plant, stem, leaf, flower, and sap is loaded with chemicals called furanocoumarin. In the dark, they do nothing. But the second that sap lands on your skin and meets sunlight, it begins. The compounds strip away your skin's natural defense against ultraviolet light. Put simply, the plant turns your own skin against you, and it makes the sun the weapon. And you won't feel a thing while it's happening. No sting to warn you. 15 minutes of contact is all it takes to set the reaction in motion. The medical name is phytophotodermatitis. Break it apart. Plant, light, inflamed skin. Within 24 to 48 hours, the skin goes red. Then blisters rise, sometimes small, sometimes the size of grapes, running in streaks wherever the sap traced across you. In the worst documented cases, doctors have described what amounts to third-degree chemical burns. The blisters darken. The skin pigments. The marks can linger for years, and if the sap reaches the eyes, it can cause temporary damage, and in rare recorded cases, permanent blindness. That part isn't for shock value. It's in the medical literature. Now here's what locals don't love to discuss. In many counties, the only safe, legal way to remove this plant is to call licensed professional. Not you, not the guy with the weed whacker, because cutting it makes everything worse. Slice the stem and the sap can splash 3 to 4 feet through the air. Officials specifically warn against string trimmers and brush cutters for that exact reason. The crews who handle it wear Tyvek suits, waterproof gloves, rubber boots, eye protection, face shields. Sit with that. To deal with a wildflower, the experts dress like they're walking into a contamination site. Let's trace where it's actually taken hold, because the map should make you look twice at your own street. Start in western New York. Erie, Niagara, Genesee, Orleans, Monroe. This is the old stronghold, going back to that first Rochester planting more than a century ago. For decades, it stayed tucked along riverbanks and forgotten rail corridors. But seeds travel. A single plant can throw off up to 100,000 of them, and they can float downstream on moving water for up to 3 days before rooting somewhere brand new. That's how the edges keep moving outward. Follow the water east and you reach the Finger Lakes. Ontario, Yates, Tompkins, Schuyler, Steuben. The streams feeding those lakes work like highways. One plant on an upstream bank becomes a colony downstream in a few seasons. And here's what quietly unsettles the botanist. It isn't that the plant sprints on its own, it's that we keep carrying it. Mowers scoop up seeds and drop them miles away. Construction equipment ferries them down new roads. Floods scatter them across fresh soil. We built the roads and the ditches. The plant just took the ride we offered. Then comes the central New York cluster. Onondaga, Oneida, Madison, Cayuga, Oswego. This region sits where old industrial corridors meet a web of waterways, and confirmed sightings have stacked up here over the years. What makes this stretch tense is how close it all is. These aren't empty wilderness counties. They hold dense suburbs, school districts, public parks. The distance between invasive plant in a ditch and invasive plant beside a soccer field is thinner than most residents ever imagine. And when a child brushes past a stem, nobody finds out until the blisters surface 2 days later. Push into the North Country and you'll find it in Jefferson, Lewis, and Herkimer. Colder, wetter, more remote. You'd expect that to slow it down. It hasn't. This plant is a perennial. It rides out winter underground, then explodes back every spring. Its dead brown stalks stand through the snow like 14-foot skeletons pointing at the sky. And here's the fact that really gets me. The seeds can stay alive in the soil for up to 10 years. You could clear a patch completely, walk away certain you'd won, and watch it return a decade later from seeds you never even saw. Now the southern tier and the counties feeding the Catskills: Broome, Chautauqua, Cattaraugus, Tioga, Sullivan. Sullivan matters because of where it points, straight toward the Catskills and the watershed corridors that eventually drain toward the Hudson. And once giant hogweed reaches a major river system, containment stops being a local headache. It becomes regional. Every tributary turns into a launch point. Specialists have a tidy word for a plant that's dug in like this. They call it naturalized, which is really just a polite way of saying it lives here now and it has no intention of leaving. Which brings us to the counties that should get the attention of anyone near New York City: Orange, Putnam, and Nassau. Orange and Putnam sit in the Hudson Valley, an easy commute from millions of people. Nassau sits on Long Island, one of the most crowded suburban stretches in the country. This is no longer a rural oddity beside a forgotten railroad. This is the plant reaching the doorstep of the metro region. When specialists mapped the confirmed sightings, this exact creep eastward and southward is the pattern that stood out. The territory moved. It's still moving. So why now? Why does this feel like it's coming to a head in the mid-2020s instead of decades back? Part of it is plain arithmetic. Every plant left standing dumps tens of thousands of seed. One plant becomes a patch becomes a colony, and a colony leaves behind a seed bank in the ground that lasts 10 years. The rest of it is us. More development means more disturbed soil, and disturbed soil is exactly what this plant craves. Warmer, wetter northeast seasons may be stretching its growing window too. I'll flag that last piece as my own read, but the trend is hard to ignore. Let me make it real, because numbers don't land until you picture a person. A hiker pushes through some tall roadside growth on a bright afternoon. Sap catches on a forearm. No pain, no warning. That night, nothing. Next morning, a faint pink line that looks like a scratch, easy to shrug off. By the second day, the arm erupts, blisters like grapes, weeping fluid, a searing burn every time the wound meets air. The emergency room, bandages, and months later, a dark scar in the exact shape of the leaf that grazed them. The children's cases are the ones that stick with people. Kids love the hollow stems, perfect size for a play sword, a spyglass, a blowpipe. There are documented cases of severe burns to the face and hands in children who did nothing more than pick up a cut stalk they found lying on the ground. And because the reaction runs on a delay, no parent ever links the blisters back to that cool stick from 2 days ago. That delay is the cruelest thing about this plant. It strips away the one thing that keeps us safe around danger: an immediate warning. Here's the identification trap that catches even careful people. Giant hogweed has lookalikes that are nearly identical from a distance: cow parsnip, angelica, wild parsnip, and the genuinely toxic poison hemlock. Cow parsnip gets mistaken for it most often, and while it can irritate sensitive skin, it tops out around 5 to 8 feet. The real tells for giant hogweed are specific: the height over 10 feet, stems blotched purple-red and covered in stiff white hairs, and that massive flower head. But out in tall grass on a quick walk, who's stopping to inspect a stem for purple spots? Almost nobody. That's why officials have effectively drawn do not touch zone. Not always fenced, not always marked, but real in practice. In New York, giant hogweed is a prohibited species under state regulation. There's even a dedicated hogweed hotline where people can report a sighting. And the state's guidance is blunt: don't touch it, don't cut it, don't play hero in your own yard. Report it and let trained crews do the removal. When a government agency tells you to keep your hands off a wildflower and call for backup, that tells you everything you need to know. There's a psychological layer here I keep circling back to. We're wired to fear things with teeth and claws: a bear, a snake, a spider. Every instinct screams back away. But a plant, a tall, pretty plant with white flowers by a stream, Every instinct says come closer, touch it, photograph it. And that mismatch between what looks dangerous and what actually is precisely the gap that keeps sending people to burn unit. Giant hogweed turns our own sense of safety into the trap. It never has to chase you. It only has to look harmless enough that you walk over to it. And once it's dug in, clearing it is brutal work. You can't just yank it out. The root stalks are tuberous and stubborn, and any sap contact risks a burn. Cutting the flower heads before they seed helps, but that 10-year seed bank means a single season of effort is nearly meaningless without years of follow-up. Herbicide, applied by trained hands. Repeat monitoring. Full protective gear every single time. This is a multi-year campaign against a plant that treats a decade like a short nap. Most homeowners simply don't have the gear or the resources to fight it the right way. So step back and look at the whole shape of it. What we're really watching is a slow territorial shift. A plant that lived quietly on the margins for 100 years is now nudging into the places we actually live. Riverbanks feed the streams. Streams feed the suburbs. Suburbs feed the parks where our kids play. Nothing about it is dramatic in any single moment. That's the whole point. It's the slowest imaginable invasion measured in seed drifts and drainage ditches. And it's exactly the kind of threat we're worst at spotting until it's standing 14 feet tall at the edge of the lawn. The old assumption was simple. Nature stays where it belongs. The dangerous things are out there, deep in the woods, far from the mailbox and the driveway. But that assumption is quietly coming apart across the Northeast. The boundaries have moved. The map I just walked you through, from Erie all the way to Nassau, from the North Country down into the Hudson Valley, isn't a picture of the past. It's a direction of travel. And giant hogweed is only one player in a much bigger shift. We're moving into a time where the line between wilderness and backyard means less than it ever has. If you take nothing else from this, hold on to three things. Learn to recognize it. Over 10 feet tall, purple-blotched hairy stems, an umbrella of white flowers, leaves as wide as your outstretched arm. Never touch it, never cut it, and never let a child near a hollow stalk lying on the ground. And if you find it, report it to your state agency instead of handling it yourself. That's not being dramatic. That's the exact protocol the professionals follow, because they've seen firsthand what one careless afternoon can do to a person's skin. I've spent a long stretch going through the sighting maps and the medical case reports for this one, and what stays with me isn't the height, and it isn't even the burn. It's the patience. 10-year seed, flower heads throwing 100,000 of them, roots that sleep through winter and wake every spring without fail. We keep picturing invasions as fast and loud. This one is slow and silent, and it's winning ground precisely because it never looks like it's doing anything at all. Turns out the quiet ones are the ones that redraw the map. The world of tidy, predictable nature, the one where the dangerous things stayed politely out of sight, is already gone. We're living in the wake of 100 small choices. An ornamental import here, a mowed over seed there, a warmer season, a floodplain, and the result is a landscape rearranging itself faster than the warning signs can keep up. Giant hogweed is a symptom, not the whole story. The real story is that the borders of the wild are shifting, and they're shifting toward us, not away from us. So here's what I'll leave you with. Look a little closer the next time you walk a trail, a riverbank, or the overgrown edge of your own property. That tall, innocent-looking wildflower might be anything but. And now the question I actually want you to answer, because I read these. What have you seen in your own region? Some plant, some animal, some change in the land that turned up where it never used to be and that nobody could quite explain? Drop it in the comments, because I suspect a lot of us are noticing the same thing. We're just not saying it out loud yet.